Is my speaker on?
I can hear you.
Christina, let's go ahead and call the roll.
Mr. Porter, I'm not sure what's going on. I can give this a shot and stand in if you want.
Okay, how come all this money we spent on this thing isn't working too well?
Chris,
Mr. Porter, this is Christina.
Hi, Christina. Finally, you all right?
Sorry about that. Mr. Zach was calling me on my phone, so I popped out of the meeting for just a second to help him.
Okay.
And so he should be good to go. He was using the wrong conference ID number, so
Okay.
he might be joining us. I told him we were going to go ahead and get started.
Okay, go ahead and call the roll.
Joe Zach?
Here, finally.
Oh, good, Joe.
All right. Awesome. Larry Porter?
Here.
Mark McDonald?
Here.
Garland Land?
Here.
Jack Looney?
Here.
David McDowell? Bridget McCandless?
Okay.
I haven't heard from Mr. McDowell.
Okay, we'll go ahead and approve the minutes of the last two meetings, and hopefully he'll catch up with us. I hear a motion to approve the minutes of the last two meetings on the 12th, 11/12 and 11/19.
So moved.
Second.
I second.
Thank you. Do I need to call the roll or just ask everybody to say yay?
Yeah, I can call the roll for that.
Thank
since
you.
it was a motion. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Jack Looney?
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Yeah.
I'd be asking for an amendment to the 1119, so however you'd like to approach that.
Amendment to what on 19?
There is a reference that discussion took place regarding the Bondurant decision. I suggest that it was more than a discussion, but in this discussion, this feedback is terrible. I hope you're hearing me okay. I had asked, I think it was Mr. Knoll that was there, if the summary that was provided by Sarah Carnes was, if the city agreed that it was appropriate and correct, and in addition, the Bondurant decision was correct and legal. And Mr. Knoll said that he would check with others, and I have in my notes that he would be responding to us today, but I don't see it in the minutes in that regard or that detail, and I don't see it on our agenda. So I'd be asking for an amendment to show that more detail about what discussion took place.
Well, I know the council received it. I guess we can. Anybody want to second that motion on the amendment?
I'll second it.
I'm not sure I understand what the amendment is.
I'm not either. I couldn't get all of it. It was garbled on your end, Jack.
We'll try one more time so everyone does understand. I refer to the memorandum, the summary by Sarah Carnes that we were all provided, and asked if the city felt that it was appropriate and agreed with. In addition, I asked that we provided information stating whether the city felt the bondurant decision was legal and appropriate.
Okay,
More detail than just discussion took place. And in addition, it's not on our additional comment. It's not on our agenda.
Chairman Porter, this is Sarah.
all right, Sarah.
Hi. Jack, are you talking about the minutes from the last meeting? Because all I see are the minutes for November 12th and November 19th of last year are on the agenda to be approved today. So I don't see any minutes from January or February.
How did we get the minutes from November 2020? Just a type error?
Mr. Chair, this is Christina.
Yeah.
No, it's not an error. We did not have a meeting in December. It was canceled. And then the January and February meetings, we were asked to take everything off the agendas except for the few things that you guys wanted on there to discuss. So now we need to catch up on the minutes. So I did the couple from November, and then the next meeting we'll do the January and February ones.
Okay, then Jack's,
Mr. Chairman, I'll withdraw my motion in that is for an amendment because that's my error and not seeing that was an old meeting.
okay. Thank you, Sarah. Can we have a vote now on the call roll on the vote for the minutes of November and 19th and 12th of 2020?
Jack Looney,
Yeah.
Garden Land,
Yes.
Mark McDonald,
Yes.
Larry Porter,
Yes.
Joe Zach,
Yes.
and Mr. McDowell, are you on the call yet? Okay, that's it.
Okay, motion passed. Item number 2 on the agenda is presentation and continued discussion on the resiliency and cash balance policy for WPC.
Yeah,
Who'll
Mr.
be
Chair.
handling that, Adam?
Yeah, I'll kick it off real quick. So this is a continuation of the last discussion we had on this policy with the board. So we took some of the feedback received and looked at this again. Some slight modifications were changed, very slight. And I think one of the biggest concerns that we heard at the last meeting was about capital. And I think at the end of the meeting, some questions were asked about capital to Lisa Phelps, and I think those were addressed. So our hope is that those concerns have been addressed now, but I'm not sure. So we'll go through the presentation and address any questions afterwards. I'll hand it off to Chris.
Okay, thank you. Chris, go ahead.
Hey, good afternoon. I'm going to share my screen and should be able to open the presentation here. So as Adam alluded to, this is essentially the same study, the same methodologies, and the same findings that we presented a few weeks ago to both the PUAB and the city council. And I don't know if you want to flip through all the slides since there hasn't been a lot of change, but I might go to a few that just kind of remind you of how WPC is a little bit different than the water department and IPL. And on slide number 5, titled Background of the WPC Department's Cash Balances, this is the same table we showed for the other utilities. The primary difference is that WPC has very large debt service reserve requirements. So out of the $30 million, the debt service reserve fund is not counted as an available amount of cash because that's been pledged to bondholders. That's a much bigger number than in the water department, and it's attributable to the environmental mandates that the water pollution control department funded through recent bond issuance. The other big difference is that the bond construction and CIP projects that have been approved. So in total, that's about $20 million of the $30 million available that's locked up and unavailable or considered unavailable for the risk levels that we're talking about here for the cash balances. So that number we see down there highlighted in yellow, about 69% of WPC's cash balances are unavailable. That's essentially double the other two departments. They're in that 30-35% range. So a different utility system. Our next slide shows in the blue box in the middle, essentially what the recommendation is. We're showing that current cash on hand that's available is about $9.6 million. And as we go through all of these risk levels, we have a recommended level, a target of about $16.5 million. So for WPC, the target, you're short of the target by about $6.9 million. So there's a shortfall here, whereas the other two departments were above the target. So are there any questions on those slides?
Mark, do you,
I don't, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
My concerns is on, well, first of all, I have a concern about how we chose different risk levels. And I'd like to address that. But before we do that, I'd like to go to the slide, well, it was page 20. It says a cash balance summary of revenue and expense risk. Yeah, that one. Now, Chris, did anybody add those numbers up? Like, was less conservative levels, was that added up to 8.3 million and moderate levels 13.2 million and more conservative 19.3 million?
That's if you just said, let's go down the column and say, if we just went the moderate level across all those risk categories, that does equal the 13.2 million. So we picked and chose certain risk levels that we thought, were more risky to the utility. For example, the sales decrease, the ones you see at the top, and then some weren't really that important. We didn't feel the other expense risk.
Well, and I understand exactly what you did, but I think I would recommend that somebody double check this chart, because those numbers do not add up to what is indicated on this chart. In fact, the first one is 8.17 million. The moderate level is 12.84 million. If you just go straight down the line, like you're asking us to, and the last one is 18.45 versus 19.3 million.
We probably should have added an asterisk of numbers don't add due to rounding, but we can confirm those.
Well, that's a pretty substantial rounding issue.
Yeah.
Especially 19.3 million versus 18.45 million.
Yeah.
I have some real concern with a product that has those kind of discrepancies, and you're asking us to look at a target of 16.5. So we've been through this process with you several times. I totally agree that we need to have the reserves. I totally disagree with the fact of selecting the most conservative, and in many cases, more conservative than our other utilities. And of the three, I think WPC is probably the more stable of any of them. They would have the least amount. And I'm going to be recommending that we go with the lowest level that we possibly can on the reserves, and to take into account every one of the issues that have been brought forth. And instead of 16.5, I think the number should be 8.3. So do I need to make a motion? Is that what I need to do at this point, Mr. Chairman?
Not at this point, but I have some questions. That was my first question, Chris, is why we came up with the number of 16.5 million. there's a lot, I have a lot of concern because there's been some stuff that I voted on when I first came on this board is the stabilization, was it the Lime stabilization, I believe, or whatever it was, for $5 million. And I understand that that project isn't complete yet. Does anybody know? Is that project done? Is that in order and working?
I'll hop in here. Construction is going on currently and scheduled to be done in the fall. The vast majority of the money for that project has been encumbered or spent. There's currently a balance of that project of $891,000 left available. So yes, the bulk of the work is being done. In fact, you're welcome to go watch construction anytime, but they're working on it every day, and it's scheduled for completion in fall.
What?
I guess my question is it still showing up? And I don't have it in front of me because I didn't print out all 54 pages of the package. Now, is that still located on our capital budget for WPC?
Yes. It's still in our balance of ongoing projects. Like I said, the current balance available for that project is $891,000 of the original 5.2 million.
Is that what's showing up in the capital budget for your future? 800 and something thousand or 5.1 million?
891,000.
Okay.
Is that enough to cover it, Lisa? Is that going to cover the completion of this thing?
What's left? Yes.
Okay. All right, that's the only question I had, Chris, on that. But I don't know. I still don't agree on the 16.5 million. I'm against that. Go ahead with your presentation.
Okay, so this table is, again, a summary of the risk levels. And again, the green ones are the ones that PFM is recommending in order to reserve against these risks. And a lot of them are, the big three up there: general sales decrease, loss of some customers, interest expense. A lot of those are driven by COVID, and meaning it was a riskier environment than we've seen in the past. So we can understand why there's some consternation about why we're on the right-hand side. It is, so it is your decision if you want to move to a different level. But PFM thinks it's prudent, at least for today, and say this quarter and the like, to look at that more conservative level. There's nothing to say that in a few months you can't reassess and say, let's move to the more moderate level. We feel COVID's behind us. There's no more economic recession threat, or it's much diminished and reduced. But that's just my idea there.
The biggest one is working capital.
Right, the working capital, and again, the working capital. This reflects the essentially what it takes to keep the utility running and how much days cash you keep to address just the overall operating expenses plus pilot plus debt service. And again, higher number because this utility does have higher debt service requirements than the other two utility systems on a size basis. I think one other question that, if we go to our next slide, this summarizes, again, we build on a previous slide about the cash balance. So this is slide number 21. And again, we just put in here what the target is of 16.5. And again, I think there's some rounding errors in that table, but we will confirm that for you. So we apologize for that shortfall here. And the shortage is about $6.9 million. So this is the area, lower part of the target, lower part of the table under the blue line. So again, a little bit different for this utility versus the other two where we believe there's a shortfall here. I think one other question folks had was, well, if we do have this recommended level, how would the rating agencies think about this, and how does this compare to some regional folks around you that have sort of similar systems? When we look at some of the towns around you that have, maybe you've heard of, maybe you've seen, they have similar populations. So this is their comparables. And we expanded this table to talk about what type of system is included. So about that middle column there that says type, some of them are wastewater and sewer, some of them are WPC or sanitary sewers, so different systems, but we culled out as much as we can the water versus water pollution control. And we could see with this level of recommended cash, so 300 days, how does that compare to what we call peer utilities? You're still about 100 days below the average. So I think the idea here is that although the number of $16.5 million seems high, the reality is that it's still below what your peer group is.
So if we went to this lower level in terms of working capital from the 7.4 million down to 2.5, would that reduce the number of from 300 days to even lower than that?
Yes, it would reduce it. We'd have to do the math to show what it is. I think, when you think about it, you're the second lowest here compared to Lawton, Oklahoma, but so you'd reduce it quite a bit. But
so would that potentially affect our rating from an A rating down even lower? Potentially. Well, I know you couldn't say for sure, but I mean, is there a potential there?
There's a potential. I think that WPC does have a bond transaction in its near future, so we'd say maybe if you wanted to reduce it, you wait till kind of after that bond transaction, so your balance sheet looks relatively healthy at this level, and you could talk to the rating agencies about it, and then you could say you're going to reassess it. So yes, I think we'd put it in a lower, what we call a bin or a bucket in the ratings grid of Standard & Poor's.
I don't see that that's a wise move to jeopardize our potential rating.
So days cash is one of the big three financial metrics they look at. So it would have to be a little more of a holistic look of debt service coverage, days cash, and then what we'll call fixed charge coverage also. So it's a couple of buckets they look at, but if they see a large reduction, then they kind of wonder what's going on.
So the other major reduction, if we went with what Mark is proposing, it would be the general sales decrease from 1.7 million down to 0. Could you tell us again what that means, what that is?
Sure. So the general sales decrease is a means to measure what we call macroeconomic risk. So this is an economic slowdown in the area. So what happens if we have a recession? So this looks at your historical sales, how they vary during, for example, the Great Recession of 2008, 9, and 10, and it applies some of those similar changes in overall sales and what was experienced back then, and applies that same kind of methodology of a sales decline. So basically, we've taken some historical data on this, and let me go back to, I think it's slide 10. So you can see that's how we came up with that level of cash here. So $24.3 million is the fixed cost of the utility. We're saying there's an assumed variance of 7%, which was experienced during the Great Recession. And you do the math, 24.3 million times 7% for 1 year, and that comes up to the $1.7 million. If you go to the moderate level, you could see that really just addresses a 3% reduction or variance in volume. And, so that's a less severe recession.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, go ahead, Mark.
I understand exactly what Chris is talking about, but are we taking into account the inelastic demand of WPC? We can turn off lights. We can shut down water if we need to slow it down, but there's no slowing down wastewater or rainwater. I'm really concerned that general sales decrease, I don't think it's applicable for WPC. Chris, did you look back at 2008 or 2009, and did the WPC experience some major drop off in sales?
Yes, we looked at the sales, the volume treated, and it was
no. I didn't say volume treated. I said sales. We produced we do our on 3 or 4 months a year for determining what the price is going to be per month. So unless it was February, March, or May, or whatever dates they are, that wouldn't affect what the price is and sales. If you're a customer, you're going to get that bill, right?
Right. If customer gets a bill, but a lot of these expenses are all driven by the volume that goes through the facility to treat it.
Only during the test period.
Well, we went back to 2007 and looked at all the data for essentially 2007 till last year, and that's what some of the volume deviations were.
Did they have sales variations?
I would have to go back to the spreadsheets and look at it.
I think you need to, because I don't see how it's possible. Lisa, does that make sense to you, what I'm saying?
So I understand what you're saying. One point of clarification though, residential are the only people billed on a winter quarter. So all commercial sales would be based on actual volume. So there's no variance there. That's all just truly based on volume. And then even though, yes, we bill on winter quarter, that's still volume based on what goes through the meter in the winter months, which in theory then is effectively what goes through the meter monthly on average, because by billing on the winter quarter, we're trying to avoid basically picking up irrigation water and things like that. So
sure, I understand.
So yeah, it's still very much volume based, and especially on the commercial side, everything is strictly volume based.
Did we get that data to show us that 2007 through 2009 there was a major drop off in sales?
So if there's a loss in volume, then we have a loss in sales.
Did we get that information? That's what I'm asking.
Yes.
I'm just saying, let's validate this data rather than just plug in numbers.
No, Chris said that that PFM did review that since 2007, all of our volume and sales since that time.
And did that substantiate a $1.7 million need for reserves?
Well, when you do the math, that's what it does come out to. And again, this is the more conservative level that we elected to use for this analysis.
Okay. Thanks, Chris and Lisa.
Garland, are you happy?
Well, I mean, I'm willing to look at some changes, but I'm not willing to look at the change on the working capital. I think that one needs to be remained at the 7.4. I'm willing to look at reducing some of the others if that's the way the other members want to go. But I think the working capital needs to be at the 7.4.
Okay, go ahead, Chris.
I think that in terms of the presentation, I think that kind of essentially wraps up a lot of what we wanted to talk about. I understand it's a different situation than the other utilities. We think that there's a analytically supported reason for having these levels, and WPC here with the recommended level of $16.5 million does fall below it. There are some options, and the slide 23 lists out a few options here. There's a refunding opportunity coming up this fall, so retaining that cash in the Water Pollution Control Department will help close the gap. Again, number two here, make that decision, policy level decision that maybe things are too conservative based on your feelings and your experiences, and maybe move those more towards the moderate level, the middle level, or the more risky levels. So that's really kind of a policy call on your behalf if you'd like to do that. We've looked through some of the CIP plans, and they seem reasonable. I know Lisa talked about the one big project she had and what's the remaining balance on it. And then you could just have we do talk about rate increases here, but in general, I think, we are more conservative. And, is COVID in the rearview mirror? It kind of feels that way sometimes. And then the next headline says, well, maybe it's not. So the other thought could be is you wait a couple months and say, let's reassess. And maybe at that point, you don't take any type of rating action or anything like that, but you might move into that lower cash target level if you feel that the COVID crisis is really behind us.
Thank you, Chris. My comment is this. I agree with you. We don't know where we're at on the COVID, number one, like you said. Number two, we don't know what new or changing regulations are going to come down from federal government on us. And I don't know if this is a rush to get this approved or not, this balances that you have here. I just think that we don't know, we're too much in doubt of the future, number one, I think. I don't want to prove anything right now myself. I just soon put it on down the line someplace and look at it a little better and more thorough, but I'd like to have better figures on where we're at on a lot of times. I wonder at times if we're not just pulling figures out of the air. Of course, I'm not a actuary person. I don't know all the ins and out of the way we come up with these figures, but we're in real doubt. I think I am personally of what the future looks like in the next 3 to 4 months down the line. So I'm against approving anything on this at this time. So what do we need to do here?
Can I ask a question? Do we need to have a cash balance policy in order to go to the next presentation on the refinancing of the bonds?
Is that for you, Chris?
We have a presentation prepared to talk through the refinancing of the bonds.
But is it important to have a policy in place on our reserves in order to refinance the bonds?
If you told the rating agency that, okay, we spent a lot of time and had a lot of thought and back and forth about what a right level of cash is, that would be viewed positively by the rating agencies in terms of governance and management.
So I guess I'm hearing that it is important to have a cash policy.
Well, a lot of our clients do have one. And again, I think it would be perceived well by the rating agency or agencies. Again, it looks like you've examined the risks of the utility. You've made some deliberate decisions about a right level of cash. You've talked about potentially adjusting that once COVID's in the rearview mirror. And I think you'd have basically one of these slides in the presentation of the rating agencies, and they go, "Well, that's great. You really looked at your business and think, it's smart for people to do that." And they just look at it positively in that manner.
Well, I think we do want to have refunding of our bonds because that will save the wastewater company some money. I understand there's some questions about what the appropriate policy is, but I think we need to resolve this issue. Let me propose something to see if we can't come to some agreement. I'm willing to go along with Mark's idea of going to the least conservative on everything except for the. Let me get back to the right side. Except for except for the working capital, and keep that at the more conservative. And I think that comes out to be around $13-some million. And I'll make that motion.
Mr. Porter?
Yes.
If you could, I think staff would like to make a few comments before a motion is made, if you don't mind, real quick.
Okay.
Okay, would you hold up then, Garland?
All right, thank you. I think Mr. Kidney may have a few comments here, please.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Norris. I just wanted to make sure, I appreciate Mr. Lever's comment about making sure that we have a policy in place. But I do want to mention we do already have a policy in place, and so I don't want to mislead this board into thinking you have to do this for the bond issue. We do have a policy in place. It's still the 63-day policy, if you will. I think what Chris is saying is the policy in front of you now, or this different message, is more of a mathematical based or risk based type fund balance, where S&P, the rating agency, may look at it's like, well, you're just pulling a number out of the air with 63 days, but look, they would look more favorably on this type of a matrix type thing where you've gone through this risk-based process. And I'm sorry to interrupt there. I just wanted to make sure you weren't feel like you're being misled, that we do have a policy in place. And regardless if we bring a 63-day policy that we have or this risk-based policy that we have, we do have a policy. We'll have a policy in place for a future bond issue. So I just want to make sure that you didn't feel pressure to do this for the bond issue. I want to make sure that the board is comfortable with the numbers that are being produced and recommended here.
Okay, well, I appreciate that.
Thanks, Brian.
Go ahead, Adam. Adam, you got something else?
I just want to, whether this policy or the water department's policy follows the same process that IPL's did, it may well. So at the end of the day, what the policy that IPL approved was, and that policy that's on the books now, is more of a framework, a risk-based framework. And each year through the budget process, the exact amount is determined through the budgeting process. So whether the number is, 16.5 million or whatever it is, every year it would be approved if it follows the same process and methodology that the process or the policy that we have for IPL right now. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
So it's more of essentially adopting a framework, and then the numbers would be part of our annual budget process. And we're, that is getting ready. We're in the middle of it right now, quite honestly. So so that would be whatever number is chosen now, we would review it again as part of the next fiscal year's budget. If it were to be
Chairman,
if it were to be approved by this board and then also the city council.
Okay, Mark, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, Mark.
Yeah, my biggest concern is, and I've mentioned it several times, I'm sure you're tired of hearing it, is how we're determining. I don't see the analytics going behind choosing the different levels of risk. And I appreciate what Mr. Land is saying. And I don't know that his motion's in place yet, but before he thinks about it, I'd be willing to move that working capital down to the moderate level versus the more conservative. And my rationale is simple. I would love for more money to be available for paying down debt when it comes time for us to be able to call, that we don't have to call the full amount. Just like I was in, it wasn't approved by the PIB, but I voted to reduce our debt on the IPL. I feel the same way. Debt is our enemy, particularly if we just keep kicking it down the road. We're at a point at this right now that when Chris talks to us about refunding, we have no other choice but to refund. And I will endorse refunding this first issue that's coming callable. But I'd sure love for us to be in a position where we weren't put in a corner where we have to refund stuff and just push it on down the path. Like IPL is paying for plant improvements, and the plant no longer exists. So that's what my position is. And appreciate you guys listening to me.
Thank you, Mark.
Yep.
Any other comments? I don't know what Adam, what are you expecting out of the board? Are we going to have a motion on this, or are we going to go on to the bonds?
I think, our preference would be some kind of action on this policy. This is the second time the board has seen it, whether it's amended based on the board's feedback or not. We would appreciate a recommendation so we can move forward with this. And again, it would be part of the annual budgeting process, whatever that threshold would need to be.
Well, the only reason that I wanted to go down to the less conservative level on the working capital is that we're already at one of the lowest levels of all the other cities in terms of number of days, at 300 days. And that concerns me. And we're at the lowest rating of an A of everybody else. And if we go to, and I think that and we know that we're always, this is one of the utilities that it's always having to go after bonds. And I think that we have to be concerned about jeopardizing our bond rating here. And so I still want to hold to keeping that reserve at the level of the 7.4 million. I'm willing to go down to the less conservative on everything else, Mark. I'll support you there, but I want to hold on the to keep our bond rating.
Mark, would you like to respond to that?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion.
Okay, go ahead.
My motion is that we go with the cash balance policy, and that our targeted amount be $10 million versus 16.55 million. And if we need to at some point later on, we can raise it to the more conservative if we see if the environment has changed. Seeing how the fact that we've never had to touch our reserves, never. I think going from 63 days to 300 days is a huge increase. And I would think that the people that are trying to sell us mortgages, is that what we're buying is mortgages, will see that we've never used a reserve, and that would go a long way in approving it. So I recommend that we go with a target of $10 million.
Okay, are you going to leave the working capital at 7.4 then?
I'm just saying, I don't care how you mix it. The bottom line target for our cash reserves is $10 million.
That would bring the working capital down to the 2.5, the less conservative.
It would bring it down. No, less conservative would be $8.3 million.
Yeah, well, but on the working capital, it brings.
And I'm saying $10 million. So that's going back up closer to the moderate level. And I agree. There needs to be reserves. We've got debt out there that we've taken in the past that we need to have available, and all the issues that are covered, whether it be treatment and disposal. Hopefully, the disposal costs are going to go down now that we won't be shipping solid waste to landfills, and maybe we can sell some of the fertilizer we get out of there. But the idea that those costs, they should be nothing. I don't see the risk that evidently the person team is seeing. So my motion is for a target to be $10 million.
Well, you dropped
I second that motion.
You dropped the target from the recommended target from 16 million down to 10 million. You dropped the target by 6 million.
It's not. It's a motion. It's not discussion time.
Garland, hold up.
Yeah.
I have a second, and now we'll have a discussion on it.
Okay.
Motion on the floor and a discussion. You go ahead now, please.
the motion was to drop the target from 16 million down to 10 million, a $6 million drop. So, and it doesn't say where it's going to be dropped from. It just leaves it wide open as to where that drop is going to be taken from. It's a $6 million drop. The lowest band.
Let me know when you want me to respond.
Wait a minute.
Okay,
Just a minute. The lowest bandwidth was 15 million. That's even lower than the lowest bandwidth. I mean, you know, I was suggesting that we go down to well, I think that this is.
You were going to go underneath the lowest bandwidth too, weren't you?
No.
You were going to be at 15 million?
Yeah, I'll go down to the lower bandwidth of 15 million.
Okay.
I feel like an auctioneer here. Is there another bid someplace?
Nope.
Okay, any more discussion on this motion?
I mean, I'm really concerned that this is going to hurt our rating.
Okay. In the discussion, Christine, call the roll.
Jack Looney,
Yes.
Garland Land,
No.
Mark McDonald,
Yes.
Larry Porter,
Yes.
Joe Zach,
Yes.
Motion passed. Okay, you got all that, Adam?
Yes, sir.
What we recommended?
Yep.
Are we done then with the
Thank you.
presentation? Now we go to the refund of the bonds on the WPC.
I think we're ready.
Okay, get started.
This is Brian. I think what I'll do is, since Chris Lover's on the call, I'll just go ahead and have him present the opportunities. This is, again, I think when we first spoke to this board, when we brought PFM on, that we were going to have them consistently and constantly be looking for refunding opportunities. And this is one that looks like a good opportunity for the WPC. And I would just turn this over to you, Chris. Mike?
Taking advantage
So,
of you, Chris.
Yeah, that's fine by me. This is a nice opportunity here, maybe a little less controversial than the previous topic. So the 2012 bonds present a very nice refunding opportunity for the department and the city. Currently, you have about $30 million of the 2012 bonds that can be refunded, and their call date. So when you could bring these bonds in and refinance them at a lower rate, similar to refinancing your house, that's in November. That's the call date. Interest rates are pretty low with some of the actions in Congress lately, meaning the stimulus package rates are ticking up a bit. But still, we ran a few sensitivities to show what the savings could potentially be at current levels, as well as a higher interest rate environment. So if rates stay around where they are now, PFM has run the numbers, and we believe you or WPC can achieve over 20% savings. I think the math points to 23%, and that's about $9 million in cash flow. Now, that's not all realized the first day. It trickles in over time as you have restructured your bonds. So similar to refinancing your house, you save every single month for a big cumulative savings. But a few $100s on your home mortgage every month adds up over 20 years. So similar concept here. We have taken the first step in really kicking off this process. We sent around a request for proposals to several banks to bring this transaction to market. There were some national banks and a couple regional and local folks who are getting this, and they'll respond, and that's due in about 3 weeks. We plan to issue these bonds in late July, and that is within the 90-day call window for a current refunding. So that's why the timing might be off a little bit, but we can issue the bonds a little bit earlier than that November call date. In terms of the savings statistics, we have our expected savings slide here, and on the top box, that middle column, again, if we expect rates to stay where they are, about 23% savings, you can see the gross savings there, about 9.2 million, and then we do a net present value calculation also. If we have a higher rate environment, and here we said interest rates across the board go up by 0.5%, the savings numbers still look good. We don't think it would curtail a transaction. You're up near 20%. Dollar-wise, that's $7.7 million. So still, the current rates and higher interest rate environment still looks to be a strong transaction. And again, our sensitivity was 0.5% increase in rates. In terms of annual savings, WPC under the current rate environment would save about $440,000 a year in debt service, and that savings happens every year through 2041. We can do some shaping of that, but there's not a lot of there's some tax rules we have to abide by and the like, so there's not a lot. We can't front load savings so you get all of it in the first few years. If rates do go up to that higher level, we would expect that annual savings to be about $375,000, $380,000 a year. So again, pretty strong transaction in today's rate environment, and a strong transaction even if rates go up. So the idea is we get the banking team together, get the process going, rating agencies, and then come to market. And our road ahead here, the underwriter RFP has been sent out. We expect to talk to certain banks, review their proposals, and the city will make a selection in April on this. I think we're scheduled to come back to the PUAB in June for review and approval of the documents and the like. And then the rating agencies will be in mid-June also. And our plan is to price the bonds in the late summer and close in early August. And that's essentially a summary of the refunding opportunity.
Okay. Any questions?
Do you need anything for us right now or later when you come back to us?
Chris, if you don't mind, if you're still showing your desktop, could you go ahead and show that refunding slide so the folks watching on YouTube could see the savings, and then it'd be in the record.
Is it? I should be still sharing it. Am I sharing?
No.
I'm sorry about that. I thought I was sharing the whole time.
And I might answer that question about next steps. Technically, this is a staff thing to bring over to council for recommendation for hiring of the underwriter, improving the underwriter. However, we just wanted to make sure we showed the board the transaction, what's going on, and keep the board, in communication and the whole way through this transaction. So we will be reporting back through every step of this way. But our next actual action would, when we receive the responses back from underwriters, that we'll be taking what staff would be recommending to the council on the best bank to do the refunding with.
And we'll see that before it goes to council?
Yeah, I believe the timing would work that way.
I mean, are you doing this in July?
Well, we're expecting we're expecting the responses from the underwriters here in the next 3 weeks, and so we'd be able to share with the board what our recommendation, what bank we'd be going with the board before it goes to council. Then the transaction itself takes place, the marketing and the actual financing would take place in July.
Okay.
But it moves fairly quickly at that point, and so we'll want to get the approvals done based on the market timing. And so, but what we will do is make sure that we keep this board we'll keep communicating with the board where we are in each step.
Okay, Brian, thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
this is Mark. I think it'd be appropriate for us to show a sign of endorsement for this refunding, because I do think it's absolutely necessary that we get this thing up off the ground, because we're in a position where we have to refund them to save the money.
Okay. Can you make that a motion?
Yes, I make a motion that we show that the PUAB endorses the process of refunding the is it 2012 B series bonds for WPC as soon as possible, as soon as applicable.
Downstairs.
I'll second the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Land.
Okay, motion been made and second. Excuse me, I had to answer the door.
Oh, no problem. Mr. Land seconded it.
Oh, I'm sorry. Mr. Land seconded. Any more discussion on it? Call the roll, please, Christine.
Jack Looney,
Yes.
Garland Land,
Yes.
Mark McDonald,
Yes.
Larry Porter,
Yes.
Joe Zack,
Yes.
Motion passed. Okay. Anything else on this? Let's go ahead and go to reports. Finance and Administration. You're back on, Brian.
Thank you. I'll go ahead and show my screen then. I'll ask, I want to make sure, can you see the financial statement on the screen?
No.
I see the power and light.
There we go.
Okay,
Can you enlarge it?
thank you.
There we go.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm not the best in technology, apparently. I think that happened when I hit 50. All of a sudden, I don't understand what I'm doing, but I want to make sure.
Welcome to my world.
Thank you. So this is the January reports. We had just missed the deadline for the packet for February reports, but I do have some of those numbers available, and I'll share some of those numbers with you also. But on the January report, I do want to point out, and the first one I'm looking at is the power and light on the charges for services. We normally want to be at 58 1/3% of the year to date. At the end of January, we were at 57%, not quite there. That reflects, as we've discussed numerous times, the cyber event the city had, and that delayed in some billing. The February report will show a little bit closer to the goal of being at that percentage. We anticipate probably March and April until we're back caught up with the billings specifically. There's really not a lot to note on the January reports, if you will. On the expenditure side, they're all within budget or are very close to budget. And the bottom line is through the end of January that the revenue over expenses was around $5 million. Again, some of that is impacted by the billing incident. We see that, moving forward or that gap closing the further we get into the fiscal year. I'll also share that the new fund balance calculations are plugged in here, if you will. The WPC and the water fund still have the old format for the fund balance reporting, but since the council has officially approved the fund balance matrix and mechanism, the IPL does show that. And what you see at the end of January is funds available of 10.6 million. If you recall, in February there was a credit then given back to all the electric users in the system. That was about 11.9 million, I believe. And the February report then will show that decrease in cash. So you'll see that drop, like I said, around $11 million. In March 12th, we also included a cash refunding of 10.6 million as part of paying off the outstanding debt. March 12th was when the actual payoff occurred. So your February and your March, especially your March reports, are going to look quite a bit different, where the cash will be under these particular risk levels, if you will. If you recall, Mr. Norris actually just spoke to that the risk levels and the targeted reserve levels will change each year as part of the budget, and so those numbers will change based on the mechanism that was approved. And so starting July 1st, the 67 million will change, but it will still more than likely show that we're going to be a little bit under those reserves after March, after we refunded those cash balances.
So I want to just mention that
Okay.
I saw the February report.
Oh, good.
And it looks like that we're showing a net loss for the year to date of $20 million after the rebate of $11 million. And now you're saying that the March report is going to be another, what do you say? I think $6 million or something.
It'll be another 10. It'll be another 10.6 million.
Okay. So it looks like our year-to-date financials for IPL is going to show a considerable loss unless there's something else that's going to adjust those figures. Is there something else that's going to help the IPL financials for the year, or are we going to have a considerable loss for the year? Are you projecting something to balance this out for the year?
Well, this is great questions, and with the chair's permission, with the board, if you're okay, I can show the February reports, even though it wasn't in your packet. But those are available and they are online, and so I could show you the numbers that were just being referred to.
Yeah, I'd like to see them.
Okay. All right. Good. Thank you. So this is the February report, and again, I was a little reluctant showing it because they weren't in the packet. So this is where I was coming from, that the percentages are getting a little bit closer to where we want them. But the board member is exactly right. It shows a $20 million. Now, this, I wouldn't classify these as what you'd call a normal loss. In fact, in governmental accounting and FASB accounting, they're actually called extraordinary items. And so anything like the electric rebate and then also the payoff of debt of 10.6, those two together will be $21 million. But those are technically not losses of the system. They're management and council action to lower cash balances for specific reasons. And so when you're looking at actual income and loss, usually you're looking at the actual income loss before the before the extraordinary items take place. And so,
well, excuse me, Brian, on this, you're actually improving because you're paying off some of our debt. Is that right?
Yeah, I think that's exactly why you don't include them in revenue and expenses, is because
Right.
that would be misleading the readers of the financials. In fact,
Yeah. So the reason I say that, Brian, there's a lot of, I don't know who they are, people telling us that, we're going broke, that we're breaking Power and Light funds, but we're not. We're paying off debt is what we're doing. And I think that needs to be clear to the people.
Well,
All right, go ahead. I'm sorry.
There's two different figures here. One was the rebate. That isn't paying off debt.
Well, the majority was paying off debt.
No, well, the rebate was 11 million.
right. And in March, we spent $10 million. And so this line, you'll have $11 million, and then you'll have another line that says 10.6 million in the March statement. But regardless, those wouldn't be considered operational losses. They are extraordinary events that occurred. And I think, the paying off the debt, I think, is a good story to tell for that exact reason, that we're saving interest payments in the future on that.
Yeah, I understand that. That's a separate understanding than the rebate.
Right. Are there any other questions on the electric utility?
Mr. Chairman, Mark McDonald does.
Yeah, Mark, go ahead.
Hey, Brian, first of all, I want to say thank you so much for that explanation that hopefully clears the air from any missing communication. One question, interfund charges for support services. Is that part of that $3.7 million we've been asking for a detailed listing of and we haven't gotten? Is that where that money is going?
I believe the interfund charges for support services, you'll see there's that includes rent. This would also include charges from the water department for utility billing, for the function of billing, the utility billing. I believe what you might be referring to are non-departmental expenses that I believe would be included in these other services above the line here.
Well, when I asked for a listing of all expenses not related to the production, distribution of electricity, there was that one line item that said interdepartmental transfers.
Okay, well then that would be also included in here. Yes.
Okay. And I don't want to jump ahead, but why doesn't WPC have that same thing? Do they not have any interdepartmental transfers?
Yeah, if you will.
And I don't mean to jump ahead, but when you get to it,
right.
Let us know.
I'd have to actually ask Dan or Jim on the specific amounts, but I believe this is the charges that electric pays for the utility billing portion of Dan's the water operations, and I'm not sure how much the WPC portion of that is. So I'm calling a lifeline on Dan Montgomery here.
Yes, that would be correct. That we spread those percentage wise, and I think water pollution control is about, I'm saying around 11%. Don't quote me because I didn't have that number right at my fingertips. But and then Power and Light has the largest majority of it, and we have the real close to what Power and Light has on the building. So you're correct, Brian.
Okay, I'll need to check back with our accountants, and I apologize. I don't believe any of them are on the line right here on making sure that we clarify this specific item for you.
Because there'd be the same type of fee for like meter reading. We share the cost for meter reading that we'd pass, that they would charge us back, and so it's just We charge for, that's how it works. So you're right, Brian.
Okay, so the amount down here, and what I'm doing, Dan, is I'm just going down to the water fund where it has these support services. That's probably the cost of meters then.
Correct.
Or the cost of IPL reading the meters for. Okay.
I don't mean to be a pain, but if is water department charging itself for the meter reading?
No.
Because they have 1.392 million, and for just the, I'm just looking at the first column, and it says interfund charges for support services, $1,392,000. I'm just trying to figure out what that money is.
I believe this is the money that we just spoke of, that water is charging IPL for their meter reading or for their utility billing.
Billing, mailing, the employees, everything goes through interfund charges like that. Yes.
I'm still at a loss how, if the water department is doing it, I could see the money coming into them, but I can't see the water department paying out anything for the services that they're performing.
No, it's under the revenue column there. So it'd be money coming into our fund to repay us. We can get that broke out next month. It'd be better to actually show the exact numbers, Brian.
All right, thank you.
I have a
Sorry,
question.
I won't interrupt anymore. Thanks.
That's all right, Mark. Dan, are you still there?
Yes.
How many meter readers has the water department supplied down there now?
I'd have to ask exactly the number, but I would say they're like 2/3 and we're 1/3. There's a percentage wise of how many based on the number of meters and the union contracts, Larry.
Yeah, I understand that, but I know originally we signed somebody down there.
Well, they're still there. There's still workers working under that. It's an agreement through IPL, but the steel workers work into that group. So, yes.
Okay. So you have to pay them out of the steel workers contract, is that right? Or
well, they negotiate the contract through IPL, but they still have steel worker seniority. So
okay,
if that you understand what that.
Yeah, I see what you're saying now. I understand.
So
yeah, Mr. Chairman, if I can comment.
The disconnect folks and the meter readers and all that would be billed out of Power and Light, and we pay for those services, and we split that with Water Pollution Control and us and Power and Light. But they would only bill us for the portion that is what they're billing us. But like Mark's talking about, they would not be billing us for their own people. And I think that's what Mark's alluding to on our side on customer service. We're not charging them for our portion of the mailing and our portion of the employees that are used to the percentage that we use for that. We're only billing them for the portion that's attributed to Power and Light to that fund. And same thing for water pollution control. Say customer service, I'm just making up a number here. If all of customer service is 10% of that is charged to water pollution control, they will have a fee of that we pass along to them through interfund charges. And the same thing goes for Power and Light. If that's 47% of our total customer service, then that's what they would pay of everybody downstairs that does customer service billing, if that makes sense.
A little bit. Thank you.
Brian,
Jack,
I have
Okay.
Brian, this is Garland again. This is a different type of question. The PFM report for the water department said there was a $42 million cash that they used for their analysis, but the financial report for the water department says there's $32 million. I don't know that you can answer this question, but that's a $10 million difference. I don't know. Do you know why that difference exists, or can you research that for us?
Sure, yeah, their balances are also including this capital projects in process amount.
So the 42 million is the actual figure, is the cash balance for the water department?
And no, I'm sorry, the cash balance, the ending available resources, which includes mostly cash balance, is $34 million as of the end of February.
Right.
The PUA or the PFM studies all focus on June 30th balances because we wanted to keep them all specifically tied to the audited financials.
Yeah, that I understand there was a 6 month difference, but why would it be a $10 million difference?
I'm going to have to, I'm not sure Chris is still on the line, but I'll need to get back specifically on that. Or more than likely, one of my accountants will give me that answer here real quick.
Okay, appreciate that.
Yeah.
Jack Looney with a question.
Jack?
Yes, I'm back on the interfund charge. Is that 1.8 million only for the water company support, or does that include other city support services?
So this revenue here, and we're in water right here, this is the charge that water is charging for the billing.
I'm on the power and light. I'm on the power and light budget.
This amount up here in IPL is the amount that is being charged for utility support and other either field workers and meter readers that get charged back. The reason WPC doesn't have one is because they don't charge. You don't see that revenue in WPC is because they don't charge the other two utilities for any of those services. So,
okay, my question would be then, why isn't expenses for other interfund support services shown on this sheet?
These are revenues right here.
Pardon me?
This 1.1 million, that's revenue.
No. Budgeted amounts, interfund charges for support services, 1.838. I asked if that included payments for other city support services other than water and water pollution control.
I'm sorry. Are we looking at
power and light budgetary comparison schedule?
Okay. This amount here that says 1,828,000.
Yes, sir.
That's a revenue. So that's money that Power and Light is receiving from the other two utilities for meter services and field worker charges.
Okay, that is revenue received. Okay.
Right. Yeah, I'm sorry. It's a little bit confusing because it says revenues and then there's in parentheses expenses.
It says operating expenses. Yes, that's what's confusing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a little bit confusing right here, but you're seeing net revenues here, so I can understand the confusion where that was.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, anything else?
I could just real quickly on the water. You'll see the water is a lot closer, or actually right where they want to be through the end of February on their billing, and a little bit under budget or good side on the expenditure side. And you'll see year to date is $1.6 million to the positive. WPC is actually revenues just a little bit better than what was originally anticipated, and the expenditure wise is right at, again, under budget. Most of these under budgets are very and of course the director can speak to it much better than I can, but more than likely pandemic related of not being out in the field doing some of the work, especially on the construction side. Again, I apologize that the February reports were not in the packet. However, those can be accessed through the finance department website. And we do have also included the, I've got the wrong, but we also included the dashboards for your information here also. And
yeah,
that's
I'd like to.
Okay.
I'd like to comment on the IPL dashboard. There's a lot of problems with the IPL dashboard. The figures don't make sense in some cases. It doesn't show year to date. It shows December and January rather than comparable months, so there's just problems with the report itself. I also think maybe, Mr. Chairman, that this might be a time for us to review the dashboard and see if it needs to be modified and if this are the right metrics that we want to continue to have. And maybe we ought to have a subcommittee of maybe 2 or 3 people to look at the dashboard and see if these are the right metrics or different metrics or whatever. And we've had the dashboard now for several years, but that would be my recommendation, to take another look at the dashboard and kind of look at an overhaul of it.
Would that be for each utility? Garner?
Yeah, probably so.
Okay. Well, you can make a motion to that effect, and if you want, I'll appoint somebody, you and somebody else on that committee, to take a look at it and see what we need to do with it.
Well, I'll make a motion.
Okay.
To do a review of the dashboard.
Can I have a second on that, please?
I'll second it.
Been motion made and seconded to have a committee look at reviewing the dashboard and making any changes that might be needed. Any comments on it before we vote on it?
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
The only real, I don't disagree with Mr. Landon at all, but Mr. Kidney, on the sanitary sewer dashboard, there's a number 104,519 on there, and I don't know what the heck that goes to. Do you see it?
Let me pull this up again.
Okay, I'm sorry.
That's okay. And I'm going to ask Lisa to help explain anything that might you might have on there. Here's the sewer dashboard. Are you able to see it?
No.
I haven't seen it yet.
Mark, what were you referring to again?
There's a number under the last column under the 21,586,725. There's a 104,519. I just don't understand what that number is.
Yeah, I see what you're talking about.
Yeah, I see that number also, and I'm sorry, I'm kind of drawing a blank on that number also, what that would be. It's not labeled.
Lisa, are you still with us?
Yeah, I'm here. I don't know. It's not got a total or any details, so I don't know if it was just a typing error, but honestly, I can't help here either.
Right.
Well, if it's just lost out there, my address is, you can just send it to me. I'll be glad to take it.
I would say, to me, it looks like it may have been a row that was supposed to be hidden, but when it was printed out, it's being shown. So our apologies for that.
Did you really say it's a row that's been hidden? Is that what you said?
Mm-hmm.
Oh my.
Yeah,
Public
sometimes
will love that.
that's fine. We're totally open to that. But sometimes there's calculations that need to be put together to get the numbers that you're seeing on the reports.
Real
And
transparency.
I will say also from staff purposes, my accountants will be thrilled to death to hear about changes in this in these dashboards. They've been really wanting to make changes to this, but they wanted to get feedback from the board. So they're going to be really excited about this. They really want to make sure, these professionals really want to show what it is. They want to make these reports useful to you. So on my Natalia and Kendra's behalf, I thank you. They're going to be excited about updating those.
Okay, I'll be sure that Garland gives you a call when we get started on it, and we'll get together with them.
That's great. Yeah.
All right. All right, where are we at now? I need a vote on the motion.
Mr. Chair, can I just confirm that it was Mark McDonald that did the second on this
That's
motion?
correct.
Yeah, that's correct. He did.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, Jack Looney,
Yes.
Garland Land,
Yes.
Mark McDonald,
Yes.
Larry Porter,
Yes.
Joe Zach.
Yes.
And Mr. Chair, can I just make one more recommendation that either you all, you or me or someone goes over the rules for the subcommittees before they begin meeting?
Yeah, I understand it's going to be 3, and I'm supposed to be on one of the members. Is that correct?
I believe it can be a total of 3.
Total
I
of 3.
believe. We'll have to make sure everybody understands it. It's been a while since we've referred to it.
Okay, well, I'll get with you after this meeting and we'll go over them.
Okay, sounds great. Thank you.
Is that all right? And then I'll call and ask the members who wants to be on the committee.
Okay.
All right?
Thank you.
Motion passed. Where are we at now? We're done with you, Brian?
Actually, I have a question. It's Jack Looney.
Hi, Jack.
Hi. Going back to the power and light expenses, budgetary comparison, it is confusing. So if I'm off base, stop me soon. Down on the bottom, income, parentheses less, before transfers, utility payments in lieu of taxes, $13 million. That's a expense from the utility to the city, right?
That is correct.
And I'm hastily trying to find it, but I believe I remember that amount calls for an annual review. Has that been reviewed recently?
We are working on putting together a new calculations that are very transparent and hopefully get this brought back to the POAB for their review.
Okay, and I think that says an independent audit.
Oh, I was not aware of the independent audit, but we can look into that.
Okay, I think it's critical that, each party receives and pays the appropriate amount. So I'll be looking forward to seeing that. Thank you.
All right. Okay, we go to Assistant City Manager.
Sure. So two things. The first is I included the current draft CIP in your packet. We had included this in the packet in January, but given the volume of information that was considered at that meeting, this item was tabled. So this is our proposed CIP. You don't necessarily need to discuss it, providing it as information. We can include it in a future board meeting if you want, or you can take a look and ask us questions separately, however you want to do it. So that's the first item. The second item is that the mayor issued new health orders last Thursday. And as part of that, in-person board and commission meetings are allowed to take place beginning April 1st. And so it's an optional item. If the board wants to continue to meet virtually, that is your choice. If you want to meet in person, that's your choice as well. Just ask that if you make a recommendation and a decision as a body, you make a vote on that. That would be my only ask on that.
Okay. Let's go ahead and make a motion on that right now. Garland, give me a motion.
I move that we meet in person next month.
I need a second.
I seconded Joe Jack.
Joe Jack second. All in favor, say aye, or call the roll.
Do you have any room for discussion here?
Yeah, you can discuss it. Go ahead.
Yeah, is it all inclusive, or can there be people that can phone in?
You can call in.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is, if someone wants to continue to meet virtually, we will definitely accommodate that. Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Any more discussion?
I have one thing, Mr. Chairman. Mark. I'd like to ask that we entertain a public hearing at one of our next meetings. We've been putting them off because of the COVID restrictions and the lockdown. Will we be able to facilitate that in person, Mr. Norris?
We'd have to look at occupancy requirements for that room.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, hopefully we can get something going, because there's a lot of issues that have come up that I think we really need input from the citizens if they're available and they want to come up and talk to us.
And sorry, Mr. Chairman, this is Sarah.
Yeah, Sarah.
And I would just make sure that if we are going to hold a public hearing with occupancy limits, that we still kind of allow the public to participate by Zoom or some other feature. That way, because there may be citizens who are not comfortable coming into a building yet. So if we could have both sorts of outlets for them to talk to the board if they need so.
I'm sure that can be arranged, Sarah. I appreciate your input. You're absolutely right. I know there'll be still people out there not wanting to get around other people. And I'm sure that the city IT people can get that all lined up. Mr. Norris, is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's the way we handle or are going to handle our public hearings for city council meetings. So very much the same thing. Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Now can we have a vote? Call the roll.
Mr. Chair, quick question. So the motion now is to meet in a hybrid mode, meaning in person or virtual, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Jack Looney?
Yes.
Garland Land?
Yes.
Mark McDonald?
Yes.
Larry Porter?
Yes.
Joe Zack?
Yes.
Motion passed. Okay. Anything else, Adam?
I have a question for Adam. Jack Rooney.
Jack, go ahead.
Adam, regarding your proposal for projects by funding source on your capital improvement program, are we there yet?
Yeah, I'm there.
Okay. I want to applaud you for getting a systematic undergrounding of distribution systems on the budget. I haven't seen that for a few years, but I'd like some clarity there, if you would. That could mean just your normal burial of underground for new subdivisions and new commercial. Or does this mean burial of problematic or logical overhead distribution systems?
Sure. I'd ask Mr. Nail to chime in here, please.
Good afternoon, Chairman and board members. That line item would be basically both of those. We would look at priorities based on we're looking through our maintenance records and our outage records to identify any problem neighborhoods that would need attention, and then we would also be working on the undergrounding of the service connections. So both of those.
Well, if this includes new subdivisions and such, you're not going to have enough money left to do much about getting rid of problematic areas.
Well, we went from 0 to 500,000, and we're, like I said, we are using our work order history to look for and identify those problem areas.
Okay, I don't think I'm being clear about the difference there, but would you? I'd like to offer a suggestion, use it or not, that be changed to systematic burial of overhead distribution systems.
Understood.
That's a suggestion, and that's where it should leave it. So I'll leave it at that.
Okay, thank you, Jack. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
Adam, you got any more?
That's it for me.
Okay, I got reports from the municipal services.
You've already gotten the financials, and if you had any other questions about CIP or anything like that, I'm happy to answer them, but I don't have anything else for you guys today.
I have one question.
Oh.
Mark McDonald has one question.
Go ahead, Mark.
How about the project on Nichols?
Nickel.
By north of 24 Highway. We've had that thing shut down for months and months and months.
I think
just east of Truman Library.
I feel like that's a storm project, but I will have to check specifically. And
are you in charge of the storm projects also?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I didn't know.
I am. I just need to check.
We're going to shift the police department over there next.
Yeah, I would just need to check the schedule as I don't prep a lot of storm stuff to bring to the utility board. So I apologize for that, and I will get you an answer.
Yeah, thank you so much.
No problem.
I have a question for Adam.
Go ahead, Jack.
Mr. Norris, at the last meeting, I should take the responsibility, I asked about the validity or the city's position on the memorandum on the review or the summary of the Bondurant decisions that was sent to all of the board members. And I think you felt uncomfortable in answering my question about the city's position on the validity of that decision and the legality. And I think we mutually agreed that you'd speak with your superiors and we'd get a response this meeting. Do you have such a response?
I think my response would be that the city council formally was presented with that memo on February 22nd, if I remember right. And I don't think they didn't formally adopt it, but I think generally the consensus was it was a adequate summary of the court case. Is that a fair assessment, Sarah?
Yeah, the city council discussed it a little bit. They were presented with my memo. I was there to answer any questions, but there really weren't too many. I don't think there was a formal motion to adopt my memorandum that I believe, but they discussed it, Jack. So if you didn't tune in, you can listen to it then on the 22nd.
Jack, I listened to it, and all they said, yes, it's a legitimate legal document, and it is what it is, they said. And, that's what we've been saying for years. It is what it is.
Okay.
But nobody
Well,
wants
very
to.
important
Well,
for us to be able to go forward with. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Larry.
no, that's all right. Go ahead.
It's very important for the board to be able to move forward with seeing where these priorities are and that we're harmonic with the city and the board in knowing where we're going. So that's very important. So thank you for that feedback.
All right. Could I add one thing, please?
Go ahead, man.
All right, thank you. So on Monday, the city council will, so if you recall, the city council had a non-ordinance action item on March 1st to consider the priorities that PUA be put together for IPL, and that was tabled. So they're going to discuss it at the work session, or it's on the agenda to be discussed Monday. So, I'd invite you to tune in for that. And the goal there would be to hear any feedback and then bring that back to this board for whatever you all want to do with that.
Sounds great.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I'd like to make a comment about that discussion that Mr. Norris is talking about. I took personal offense from one of the council people's comments that we've overstepped our bounds and that we're only supposed to look at the organizations from 30,000 feet. Nothing in the charter, nothing in the Bondurant indicates that we are limited to looking at anything in any one of these departments that we choose to meet. So I hope that personal message I just gave goes to the council person that made it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. I agree.
Can I hop in, Mr. Chair, one more time? Mark, just to get back to your question, I believe you might be asking about the Moore and Spring project, which is a little Moore and Spring project, which is a little south of Nickel over by the library.
Yeah.
If that's the project you're asking about, the sanitary portion of that is complete. It's a combination storm and sanitary project. Sanitary is complete. It was construction was kind of halted with COVID because our staffing levels weren't at 100%. And there was also some redesign required on the storm piece. The redesign is complete and we're starting construction back up on storm, and that should be completed by summer. So just an update.
I think those people have been, the only reason I bring it up is I drive over there quite often, and those poor folks have been without this disruption for months and months. And that's all. I just wanted to bring it up that our citizens deserve better than that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Dan, you've been hanging around enough. Let's get a report from you.
Yes, I had to sing just like Lisa. We had the finance report and the dashboards for water and for customer service that was already presented. And if you had any questions, I'm available. I had no special report today.
Dan, I have a question right off the bat.
Gotcha.
Have we corrected everything on our billing as far as charges and misreads and all that? I have received many complaints. I didn't know that I got on this board to receive complaints, but I guess I am. And it's not, is our billing doing all right, or are we, I just don't understand why we can't get this corrected if it is wrong.
So the billing is correct. It's just, we're just getting caught up, I just put a note to myself because I'd answered a customer just a few minutes ago. I've answered a few of these just like what you're talking about, Larry, probably on a daily basis for the last month. So what happens is, we read the meters and it's all based on the previous usage. So all the usage that's been billed to folks is correct and the billing is correct. But when we had to take time to review the bills, get the bills out, which means they had to be billed, mailed, and then we give them 17 business days to pay their bills. So we've got folks that are getting bills and they're getting another bill before they get their payment in. And then we throw in there the IPL credit. And so some folks took advantage of the IPL credit on the January bill, and it was billed out in the February bill. And so we've had lots of questions, and the answer is the billing is correct. The billing system is correct, but we're just now getting caught up, and just bear with us. And I've been able to answer the questions to the satisfaction of the folks that I've actually talked to. But if you have a specific thing, Larry, you can send them our way, or if you have a question for me, I see Jim's on here. He can probably jump in here too.
Well, I've been able to answer them just the way you've been telling me. I understand I understand the complications you went into, but I think it's gone on for some time now. And it seems like every time we get about even, something else happens,
Right. You're correct.
And the meter reading, I've got genuine concern about that, because whoever reads my route, I'm going to go check his readings on my bill, because he hasn't read it in 3 months.
So what we,
if it says estimate, I'm fine with that. But if he's not going to read it, I got a new gate just so he could get in. So we haven't even seen him in the neighborhood.
So last month we made an effort to make sure that we got a read on everybody that we could get a read on. Just because it started that winter quarter that Mark was talking about earlier, as far as the sewer billing. So we did have to, last month, we did have to estimate 6 cycles, because if you recollect, we had some really, really cold weather.
Yeah.
And you can't pop a lid off of a water meter out in somebody's yard and possibly freeze that. So there's like 6 cycles that had to be estimated. Currently, this month so far, they've read every cycle. Jim's shaking his head, which is a good thing. And they're making every effort. We tried to catch billing up last month. That's what prompted all those bills to go out back to back and draw a lot of concern. But we're back on schedule. Hopefully, they're reading on weekends, and every day they're reading overtime. So they're doing everything they can. But, when it rains all day long, or if it's below freezing, there's times when they cannot read. Only thing short of that is if we had automatic reading, that might correct that, but we don't have that as an option. So we're doing everything we can. We're working.
Keep trying to sell it.
Yeah, I'm trying. So I'm preaching to the choir probably, but anyway, that's where we are. But the billing is correct, and anybody has a question, we're here to answer those questions.
Thank you, Dan. Anybody else got a question?
Jack Looney with another question.
Go ahead.
Any idea why some customers didn't even receive a bill 2 billings ago?
In the month of December, there was no bills. That we couldn't even put bills out. So what happened in January is that most people got 60 and 70-day bills because of just that. We just couldn't bill. We didn't even have a system to bill with. And once we did, we had to make sure that those bills went out correctly. So people had huge bills. I'm going to say huge. They had no bill in December. Some folks paid in December on just what they thought they might owe. And then that would have been subtracted from the bill that went out. But to answer your question is, nobody was billed in December.
Okay, that probably explains it then.
I have one more thing I know that I wrote down here. How much of your budget, Dan, is going to replacing mains that need to be replaced?
So, we're asking, and you guys approved to go towards the 1%, but we're actually doing about 1/4 of 1% to answer your question.
Okay. All right. That's all I got. Jim, I guess you're up next. Anybody got any more questions for Dan? Okay, Jim, you're up.
All right, there. Several meetings ago, there was a request for update on the solar farm. So in your packet, you should have a memo with data that we collected showing what our solar farms have generated, how the subscription program is operating, and then at the bottom, it has just a breakdown showing what the revenue is, the avoided cost, and then finally what the net cost is for the power that we purchase from those solar farms.
So, Jim, I've got several questions on that.
Go ahead.
If you don't mind.
Sure.
With this purchase price, is that the total purchase price, or is that amortized price for just 2020?
That is the calendar year. That is the calendar year payments we made to MC Power for the megawatt hours that they produced at the solar farms. So that is what we paid to MC Power
for 2020.
For calendar year 2020, right?
Okay, so I thought there was a single purchase price, but that's the price that we pay for that year. So it's a different. Okay.
Correct. That's the energy. That's the energy we buy from them. That's our agreement.
Okay. So, can you explain what you mean by avoided? So,
sure.
When we generate power from the solar, do we sell that to SPP, or does that go to the people who bought the power from the solar panels? I'm not sure I understand how that works.
The solar farm for us works just like if you had solar panels on your house. It subtracts from the energy that you purchase from us. So in our case, the solar farms offset some of our load, so we have to purchase less energy from Southwest Power Pool. The avoided cost is if we did not have the solar farm and had to purchase that power from SPP on the market, it would have cost us $545,000. So while our agreement with MC Power, we paid $1.6 million for it, we would have had to pay $545,000 if we didn't. So subtract that off to get what our actual cost is.
Okay.
It's like behind the meter, just like if you had solar panels on your house.
So that power is going to those who subscribe to it. Is that right?
It's just the power comes off of our total demand for the day.
Oh.
All of IPL.
It's to all IPL customers and not to just those who subscribed.
It doesn't actually go to anyone's account. It's just subtracted from our load.
Okay. So, if we were buying solar from someplace else, you're saying that it costs us $44 per megawatt.
No.
With this arrangement, if we were buying the solar from some other solar farm, what would it have cost us?
That's hard to say because we don't negotiate individual contracts like that. We buy all of our power from Southwest Power Pool. So without going out for bid and going out for additional contracts, I don't know what the offer price would have been. We pay 81 cents per kilowatt hour, or 81.50 to MC Power. Again, you subtract what we would have paid if we had to buy it from Southwest Power Pool, and that comes up with a net cost of the $44.74. I don't know how else to answer your question, Garland.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I'd like some time also.
You'd like what?
I'd like some time too.
Okay. Go ahead,
Garland's done.
I'm just trying to understand is are we getting a good deal by owning our own solar farm, or would it have been cheaper if we had contracted or obtained solar from somewhere else? Do you just have a general feeling for that?
No, sir, I don't. I'm not sure what other companies are offering solar credits for. We haven't gone out looking for solar credits, so I don't know what I'm not sure what the market is on those right now.
Okay, that's all.
Thank you, Garland. Go ahead, Mark.
I'm going to try and be quick. First of all, Mr. Nail, I appreciate this document. I appreciate that you put it together for us, and it was so simple for us to figure out what's really going on. The real question, I've got two. I was always under the impression that our phase one was at 100% subscribed. And when we were told about the phase two, phase one was so full, I couldn't even subscribe to it. So people dropping off of it,
Sure, I'll have to double check, but I believe the report that I got was that there have been subscribers who finished their original agreement and chose not to renew. So there have been some of the original subscribers that did drop off.
Second of all, thank you. This is very concerning, and I think it's fairly clear that if we had contracted with purchasing solar power, it'd be substantially cheaper than what we've got ourselves into. But at the time, we bought into what the supposable experts were, and the pressure that we received from not only members on the council, special interest groups. I truly understand where you're coming from. You're in a tough spot. My question is here, how do we dig ourselves out? Are we looking at some point, purchase? I know there's some option to purchase the panels. And I know we'd have to take into account maintenance. We'd have to take into account making sure our technicians knew how to handle them. But I think we need, for the betterment of our ratepayers, we need to have a plan on what the heck we're going to do in the future. We can't keep on subsidizing $887,000 to the ratepayers. And how did we get subscriber contributions set at 183,000? Was that just a number pulled out of the sky?
No, sir. That is the total. That's the total contribution. All of the subscribers get there's an item on their billing statement for their solar farm contribution, and that's the total for that all the subscribers for the year.
Yeah, no, I get it. I get that on my bill. How did that number? How did we calculate something that wasn't even going to come close to covering all the cost of this solar power that we're purchasing?
I can't answer that. I know the rate the solar farm contribution rate is something that was agreed to back when this thing was first originated. That's the total the contributions come to. That's all I can tell you.
And and I can tell you that I'm embarrassed that I was one of those that voted for the thing, and I'm a subscriber. And I asked a specific question to the then director, Mr. Boatwright. How much was the subscriber? How much was IPL ratepayers having to subsidize the solar? And he told us it was going to be insignificant. So that is very concerning. But we need to have a plan. We got to get a plan so that we don't go down the tubes because everybody's going to bail on this solar.
There are options in the contract for us to buy out MC Power sometime down the road. Part of that agreement would be a calculation of what their remaining costs are that we would still have to cover as part of that buyout.
Is that something that you guys see as favorable? I'm just looking for options, guys.
It's certainly something we can investigate.
Well, I hope, Adam, that's something that we will investigate to help mitigate some of these expenses. Thank you. That's all I got, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mark.
Yeah, I'd like to follow up on another green energy question. This actually came up at a recent city council meeting and talking about the CTs and the replacement of the CTs. And there was discussion that there's consideration that the CTs could be with green energy. And then you mentioned, of course, that you can't have a solar panel at our various locations of CTs, and you can't have a windmill at the CTs, and so you really can't have green energy at those locations. And then there was mention that the CTs but there was discussion that we can have green energy with the CTs, and so it wasn't clear to me if that is really an option, as we're pursuing replacing our CTs. is that really realistic that there's going to be green energy in relationship to whatever we do with replacement of the CTs?
To answer your question, what we were discussing was, options down the road. We want to look as we put out the RFP for solutions. We don't want to preclude ourselves from being able to go greener in the future. One of the things we specifically mentioned was hydrogen. Hydrogen.
Yeah, I remember you mentioned hydrogen, but then you also, as I recall, you said that there's problems with hydrogen, that there's could be mechanical problems with the hydrogen and the CT. So I got the impression that at this point in time, hydrogen isn't really a good option with the CTs. Is that correct?
Well, it's an emerging technology, and it depends on the specific system that you have and what its combustion controls are and how adaptable they are. There are some companies that are using a hydrogen blend. I don't know what the percentage is at this point, but we certainly would want to look at things that are adaptable in the future as that technology improves.
So is hydrogen the only possibility in relationship to green energy and whatever you're considering in terms of green energy and replacement of the CTs, or is there something else besides that?
One of the things we've discussed is that in the lead up to developing the RFP and doing evaluations is to include something in there where they would the people proposing their technology would be able to explain to us what the potential green features would be, and then we could include that in our evaluation.
So it's just kind of whatever they come up with. You don't really have any particular, you're not guiding them in a particular direction.
Well, none of us on the staff are in that field, so at this point we have to kind of take their recommendations.
Uh-huh.
Mr. Chairman?
Right. Go ahead.
I thought of one other thing. This is Mark. Mr. Nail, are we looking at batteries at all? That we might be able to capture some of that solar energy and use it as capacity for at least maybe one of our CTs?
Well, our solar farm does not generate enough electricity to really be a battery source. What battery systems we have, the battery systems that are out there right now, in order to match the megawatt capacity that our CTs have, that would take a pretty big battery, a pretty big collection of battery cells. And right now, most of the ones that you see out there, they only have about a 4-hour discharge time. So if something broke and we were trying to find a replacement, that battery would last about 4 hours before it would be discharged. So the battery technology, large scale, utility scale batteries that's another area that's still under development. They are making advancements every year, but they still have a way to go.
Yeah, I know I read about it in the APPA magazine, as particularly on the West Coast. But I was just hoping that we could get something out of owning these solar panels that would make sense rather than just dumping money down the tube. That's all I'm worried about.
Just as an example for you, there is a California company that's putting in a battery backup for a new set of combustion turbines or combustion engines. And in order to meet what they need, it's got over 100,000 batteries in it. That's a pretty big pile.
That's a lot of phones.
That'll fill the plant. Okay, any other questions for Jim? Okay, Jim, thank you very much. Upcoming meetings the next meeting will be April 15th, and that will be hybrid, in person or on visual. Any other comments from the board members? Hello?
None here. I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Motion to
Yay.
adjourn.
I second it.
Motion been made and seconded. We're adjourned. Have a good day and a nice weekend, guys.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Larry.
Yeah.
Thanks, Larry.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.